everybody. Welcome to Barcoding's Huddle. I'm Jody Costa. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Barcoding Incorporated. We are an automation and innovation company dedicated to helping organizations be more efficient, accurate, and connected. And I'm super excited for today's conversation because it's near and dear to something that's at the core of most of our hearts, which is shopping. So thinking through RFID and how it's impacting retail, and we have a tremendous partner on board with us today in Impinj and Ashley Burkle. So I'm really excited to get this going. And so without further ado, I'd like to invite my panelists to join me on camera, and we will get this huddle kicked off. So please go ahead and turn yourself on. Excellent. And if you are muted, be ready to hit that unmute button. Again, welcome all of my panelists. I'm very happy that you've decided to join us today, and thank you, Impinj, for making this event possible. For everyone in the audience, know that the chat is open for you. This is your time as well, so feel free to drop us some questions in there, and we will get to them either live throughout the conversation or at the end. And then, there may even be some people responding to you live within the chat. So don't be shy. We're here for you. And I guess that's about it for my intro. We're going to go ahead and get it kicked off. And I always like to start with some introductions. Lets us warm up a little bit, right? And I think I'm going to start in what is my upper right-hand corner square with Ashley Burkle. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jody. So Ashley Burkle, I'm with Impinj. I'm part of the retail industry and device OEM sales. So Impinj is a leading RAIN RFID provider and Internet of Things pioneer. And I'm lucky enough to get to work with our partners and with retailers every day to help them on their IoT journey. So RAIN RFID, which I'm sure we'll be speaking a lot about in today's session, wirelessly connects anything and everything to the internet. So from a retail perspective, we can think about it as connecting inventory items. And this delivers timely data that ultimately enables the accuracy and the visibility that retailers require across their value chain. So I've been focused on retail and consumer goods for about 15 years, and it's been so interesting to participate in the evolution of retailers and really their digital transformation journey. I'm also passionate about the ever-changing consumer behaviors, especially what we're seeing today, and I certainly look forward to continuing to enable retailers to really thrive and grow even through these unprecedented times. So thank you so much for having me today.
Oh yeah, we're thrilled to have you here today and can't wait to learn from you. Jean-Pierre, you're next on my list.
Thank you, Jody. For me, I have an interesting background. My background starts out at the University of Michigan, where I gained my master's in engineering, where I specialized in information systems and technology. From there, I was an IT consultant for U of M. I went on to also teach management information systems and computer information systems for a few years. Following teaching is when I gained my more than 15 years of experience in information technology and RFID. Over those years, I've worked for 3 RFID companies, 2 of which were startup companies, WareNet, Zebra Technologies via acquisition of WareNet, and then Mojix. This past experience basically exposed me to multiple industries ranging from defense, automotive, logistics, retail, and the aerospace market, just to name a few. So with my background, with this background, it allowed me to implement real-time location systems, design and troubleshoot wireless and backhaul infrastructures, support high visibility information technology initiatives. And I'm also thankful to have been given the opportunity in the past of managing a great group of hardware and software professional services team, many of which I'm happy to call friends in the industry. And now I'm the engineering manager at Barcoding Inc., where I help evaluate new technology, product offerings, work with our great partners such as Impinj, and oftentimes support our sales team at Barcoding on pre-sales engineering engagements.
No, we are so lucky to have you. Thank you so much for that great background. And we're going to be really looking forward to your perspective today. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for
And
having me.
Steve, let's turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much.
The newest.
This is true. Well, thank you so much. So I'm Steve Schauer. I joined Barcoding about 3 months ago, actually, and started off my career in RFID on year number 18 now, if I'm to count. So it's 18 RFID years. And if you put a multiplier to that, 90 to 150 human years, right? So been around, seen a lot of changes and such. But yeah, really happy to be part of the Barcoding team. So I work the same team as JP, Jean-Pierre, in the IoT Systems Engineering Group. I started off my career actually at Alien Technology. I was a applications engineer, part product engineer, and also was involved early on in the Academy RFID training program, which over the years I eventually became the the program manager for it and taught that course literally all around the world. And then moved into product management at that point of tags and ICs and a little bit on the reader side. So I've kind of had a chance to work the whole gambit, from the end solutions, designing applications for customers, designing and carrying out proof of concepts, and also, acting as a consultant, on prospective customers, on their applications, where are their pain points, what are their business problems they're trying to solve, and being able to put the right equipment in their hands, the right equipment, the right tags, and so on and so forth. And to that end, let's see, I took a slight detour in the middle. I worked for Applied Materials, which is a semiconductor equipment manufacturer, but hired in as an RFID engineer and also a systems and sensor designer. But I also got to keep RFID into perspective. So I got to introduce RFID into a lot of the equipment that Applied Materials now uses and some of their non-consumable parts, like RF generators and matches and things like that go into end systems. The opportunity came up to get back into RFID, and I happily leapt into it. That leaves me here today. Like JP, I've had a chance to work with just a lot of different customers, a lot of cool opportunities. Maybe just briefly to pick one, I actually got to walk the production floor up in Renton, Washington, where they build 737s at Boeing. This is about 12 years ago. And also, gotten to work with a variety of customers, large and small, but just really enjoy working with customers and putting the right technology in their hands. And Impinj in particular, always been a fan of the Speedway reader series, the R420. Really happy to see the R700 and all the innovations made on it, and being able to work with Impinj, the R700, and also the M750 chip range with a lot of current customers. So just really excited for the future. And yeah, again, thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think everyone could probably tell we've got a wealth of experience that we're bringing to the table today. And so hopefully this has gotten you very energized out there for today's conversation. So thank you, Steve, for that. Welcome aboard again, and happy to have you. So obviously RFID not new. Based on all of your introductions, we know that RFID isn't a new technology, but I think what's interesting is that there has been RFID's always had one of these reassert, what's the surge going to be, what's the tipping point going to be. But I think what's really interesting is when we hone in on the retail industry in specific, and we think about all of the change of the last 2 to 5 years, but especially the acceleration over the last 2 years. I think what's happening is that as RFID adoption grows, so does the ROI, right? So as the snowball gets rolling, we see more and more return on investment coming. So I'm really interested in starting today's conversation, thinking about how RFID really has, I'd say probably hone in on maybe the last 2 years, but really how it's been adopted in the retail industry, and how it's been an enabler for retailers who've had to literally adopt overnight all these different omni-channel strategies in wake of the pandemic response. So it's a huge topic to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley to get us going, but I think this will get the conversation rolling for quite some time. So Ashley, you want to give us your perspective?
Yeah, and it is a big topic, and you mentioned the term tipping point, right? And I think all of us coming out of 2020 saw so many changes in our own lives, but clearly in retail as well. And I think retailers had a sink or swim moment in 2020, right? They almost overnight had to change the way they served customers, some from a mandated perspective. But almost overnight, they had to figure out how to flexibly fulfill for their customers and really change their omni-channel operations. And we saw a lot of retailers succeed in doing that. And what I think is the good news is that these flexible fulfillment options have opened up different ways for retailers to actually grow and to be more successful. It's also opened up a lot of challenges, obviously, because they need to have the agility in their supply chain, the flexibility in their stores, and really the visibility and the accuracy of their inventory. And some of the retailers that did it well definitely spoke about it. So we saw retailers come out and say that they were able to move stuck merchandise from their stores by being confident about what they had and using that as a fulfillment center for their online sales, as an example. And I know Lululemon came out and talked about that. And other retailers really spoke about the accuracy and visibility that, again, RAIN RFID delivered, that was able to keep them moving through some of the toughest points of 2020. And coming out of that, I think we're seeing, and we're certainly hearing, retailers learn from other retailers about what went well and what wasn't successful for them, and being able to discover how to change that very quickly. And so I think what we'll see is the understanding and expectation that investment in digital transformation and IoT is mandatory. It's not on the roadmap anymore. It is here today, and being able to understand what is the approach to that adoption, what's going to bring the ROI, as you spoke about, and really how are they going to execute against omnichannel? Because if we think about it, the omnichannel KPI is what is going to really drive a retailer's success going forward.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. So great kickoff. I did want to hone in a little bit on this mandatory component of it. So I think it's one thing to say, I strategically want to address, or I have digital transformation, it's coming down from the board, I want to tackle this. But it's another thing to be faced with what retailers were faced with, right? So, in our previous conversations, we talked about buy online, pick up in store, BOPIS being something that was talked about a lot in our industry. We were hearing it from customers, and they were trying to strategically plan for it. And then literally overnight, they had to implement it. Talk about, Ashley, and then I'll move on to JP and Steve. Talk about a little bit about that critical moment and how RFID technologies in particular were a help there.
No, absolutely. And again, it was a sink or swim moment, right? They had no other options. They, it went to 100% having to fulfill in certain channels. And so it was really obvious quite quickly whether their platforms, their backend systems were capable of achieving that, whether they were able to pick and pack efficiently, whether they were able to serve their customers. And it all comes down to, do I know what I have and where it is? And being able to confidently expose that online, making it available to promise. Most retailers, I think, statistics tell us that they have about a 65% inventory accuracy, right? That is really low in that SKU level. If we're thinking about trying to fulfill all of these orders, whether it's curbside, pick up in store, or through online orders. So it became very clear very quickly what the gaps were. And too often the gaps were that they didn't have the visibility and the accuracy of their inventory to be able to fulfill across these channels that were growing overnight. I think one of the reports I read is that, year over year, it was over 30% online sales growth, and year over year over close to tripling curbside pickup growth. So all of that, if you weren't prepared as a retailer and you didn't know what inventory you had, could mean that you were disappointing a lot of customers.
Yeah, so Jean-Pierre, I think it's interesting, this kind of collaborative, it must have been a collaborative moment, right? Because it's not technology by itself. What I was really hearing when you're talking about inventory accuracy is also operational excellence, operational improvements, right?
Absolutely. So for me, I'll even back up a little bit prior to the pandemic. I mean, if we started looking at the numbers of online shopping on, say, for example, Black Friday, online shopping versus in-store shopping, those numbers over the last couple of years had already started shifting, right? You could see a spike in Cyber Monday shopping, all those online shoppings. You could see the shift with other, big names such as Amazon orders picking up, brick and mortar stores starting to re-strategize and shutting down some non-key geographic brick and mortar stores that they had. So you already started seeing that shift. But I think, retailers thought they had a little bit more time. They knew that this was coming, right, in a sense, but there's always that, there's no emergency right now. We have a little bit of time. And to Ashley's point, almost overnight, you now had to literally adapt to the way people were shopping. There were still needs. In the beginning, there was essential needs, right? Groceries. And then as people realized they started getting stuck at home, I know myself, for example, I said, okay, well, I'm starting to get a little stir crazy here. What home projects can I work on without having to go to a store? Can I order certain things to work on some of these projects? And two things happened to me personally. Was one, ordering things that actually made it in time, in a reasonable amount of time, because everybody else is ordering at the same time. And second was the curbside pickup. So you would say, okay, it's a pandemic. This is midway towards 3/4 ways into the pandemic, where you're starting to dip a toe in the outside world of just mask on, full hazmat suit on, and go and go have this curbside experience. And I can tell you the curbside experience I had with a lot of the retailers around that time versus today has changed significantly. They would give you a time slot to come pick it up and it still wouldn't be ready. Then they changed it to, we'll text you or email you when it's ready, and it still wouldn't be ready. And then all those experiences, both on the consumer side, but also on the retail side, made us realize that we're not ready, right? We as an industry, we as a supply chain, because it's not just a retail, it's a chain reaction. Us consumers are cranking up our online order. Mm-hmm. The retailer is trying to fulfill that and cranking up their order to their distribution centers. So it's a chain reaction, right? So quickly they start realizing, again, to Ashley's point, overnight, I need visibility. That 65% inventory accuracy that I had before, that I could continue operating that when I knew it was a problem. Now I can afford to do that because someone else who might have a better inventory system in their distribution center and their supply chain as a whole is now being able, they have the capability of fulfilling that way more efficient. So now it's a race of, can I fulfill the curbside pickup? Can I fulfill the online ordering and shipping process, right? So I think the pandemic definitely, and technology, it's usually a phased approach. It's this curve that you slowly and gradually start getting into, and almost overnight, if it wasn't an on-off switch, it was definitely a quick dimmer switch that was going on very quickly. So
yeah, well, one thing that's for sure, we we put our dollars where that best customer experiences is. So it's kind of interesting to see continuous improvement in action, right, in our own lives as we experience this. And then I'll also say that, to start to pivot our conversation to look forward, I mean, obviously we're still in pandemic response. And on top of that, personally, I know my sister, she's probably never going to go back to buying groceries the same way ever again. Right. I mean, there's many people who there's no going back. They've experienced whatever conveniences they've experienced. There's no going back. So Steve, I'm going to talk to you as we start to look forward, knowing that these channels, they need to be there, right? Customers now expect it, and these expectations continue to rise. So let's talk about what we need to support kind of that digital transformation going into 2022 and supporting these kind of omni-channel strategies that retailers have out there. So let's just maybe start with like on the data side, how can we start to think about our data?
So that's a great question, and something that's paramount in terms of getting the right information to the right people, to everyone who's buying the stock, restocking everything that everyone's ordering. You need to have accurate data at your fingertips. And so in terms of data, you can have, the greatest set of hardware out there. You can have, RFID readers, you have tags that are on, various assets and, that have an identity, but it's a matter of taking that data, taking the digital breadcrumb trail, if you will, and just making sure that it makes sense. It goes into the database makes some sort of logical business sense in terms not only of making money for the company, but the customer that just ordered something, got the text messages, and now sitting in their car at the curb. It's like, well, hey, you said it's ready. Where is it? Right. Being able to route all that information to the proper place. And so having the conduits and the software in place to make sure that data is in place and accurately too, I think is really important.
Ashley, I'm sure you would probably agree with that, huh?
No, absolutely. And I think, you hit it a little bit, but once an item is RAIN RFID tagged, it's basically a smart device, right? And you can read it as many times as you want, as many points as you want throughout the supply chain, into the store and back in for returns. I always say it's the gift that keeps on giving. And the data that comes out of that can be used in so many different ways across a retail organization, clearly in the supply chain, clearly in store operations, but there's opportunities in loss prevention and shrink. There's opportunities around associates in store operations, as well as merchandising and buying. So the data is actually leverageable in so many ways, which is why we're seeing increases in ROI around RAIN RFID programs as retailers adopt additional use cases and leverage that data in additional ways. They're really able to glean value in multiple business units and across multiple systems. So it is so important. I think most retailers have only scratched the surface of what they can do with RAIN RFID data.
So I'm curious, is there a particular, you kind of rattled off a few areas that can benefit. Is there a particular area that you find that a lot of retailers you're talking to kind of hone in as a starting place? Is it loss prevention? Is it shrink? Is there a certain spot where people kind of tend to wrap their brains around it easiest and then extend out from there? Or is it all over the place?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, there's a use case ladder that we like to talk about it. And most retailers start really thinking about the inventory visibility and accuracy. And that's where most retailers begin their journey. What's interesting is we're seeing retailers adopt and do trial or proof of concepts across multiple use cases from the very beginning now, because they understand how all of maybe the different control points inside of a store or all of the places inside of a supply chain can support that inventory accuracy and that visibility. So they're doing multiple use cases from the very start. The other thing that you'll notice is when we talk about RAIN RFID, certainly the most adopted kind of sub-segment in retail is apparel and fashion, but we're seeing it go into beauty and cosmetics and electronics and much broader categories. And when you get into those other categories, there's different use cases that might become the priority. So absolutely, loss prevention and self-checkout has been a priority. We're seeing in grocery, as an example, trying to manage traceability and expiration date. So different industries are going to prioritize differently what use cases come first. And I always say, they need to look at adoption for scalability. So understanding where they want to start and where they want to go, and then design their program and choose the elements of that program accordingly.
That's awesome. I think about, I know Jean-Pierre, you probably want to jump in here, so I'll let you go and then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say absolutely. So when we start thinking about RFID, and Ashley alluded to this, the amount of data that you have, and what I like to do with situations like that and these topics is to really refresh us on data versus information, right? Data by itself, it could potentially be not very meaningful, right? So having the right partner, having the right software, and converting that data into information now starts tying us into what I prefer to call loss awareness and visibility, right? Preventing is one thing. But sometimes for legal reasons, for a bunch of other things that are that are for our legal counterparts, right? That you may not necessarily be able to prevent, or is not worth trying to prevent. However, the data that you have that's turned into information and giving you that awareness and the visibility throughout your retail store is critical, right? Seeing patterns, and now with tying back into hard drives and the space to have this data is so much more affordable now. That and then you start with technology becoming more affordable, more accessible. You start tying it into artificial intelligence and some of those other aspects of technology. Now you're able to have visibility and awareness to so much more within your retail store, as opposed to just what's my inventory, where is it? That's absolutely necessary, but it goes into as we've mentioned, loss awareness and visibility.
Yeah, no, I love, well, one, I love how passionate you guys are. I think it really shows the increased potential for this technology. And I think one of the things that I read was that RFID technology is it enables you to do things that you can't do necessarily through other technologies. And then on top of that, you are able, if you layer it, right, you're turning that data into information that can feed lots of different areas of the business so that we can have better decision-making, right? So Steve, I would love just to kind of turn it over to you for a little bit on the technical side of why do you think RFID is such a unique, is so differentiated in helping drive these strategies, these digital strategies?
And that's an outstanding question. I think among the benefits of the technology itself is, and JP hit the nail on the head on, memory being cheaper, and the ability to send information has gotten a lot easier, and be able to receive that information. So everybody has a smartphone now, or a tablet, or what have you. Getting that information is a lot easier, even in the last couple of years, if you think about it, right? But on the technical side, one of the best benefits of passive RFID, or RAIN RFID, is the fact that information is stored onto, an RFID tag attached to an asset. That asset now has an identity, and it can do other things too, but it does not require a consistent power source like other IoT devices. In fact, to that end, I'd argue that passive RFID, or RAIN technology, has always been a critical backbone and conduit of the Internet of Things, just for that reason. So the ability to give an inanimate object, an asset, whatever it is, if it's a life-saving, mask in COVID days, or if it's a grocery item, or it's your favorite shirt, in red or a certain size, it has the identity. And as soon as you look, you need to find it, exactly where it's located. Where it's, that breadcrumb trail, or I keep using that term, but it's a good one. Exactly where it is, and you can do one of two things. You can find a needle in a haystack. You can say, I want that exact item, and the hardware and the software and everything else will lead you to it. Or you can say, hey, instead of finding the needle in the haystack, I know how many needles I have, what sizes they are, and exactly what locations they are in the store. So it's kind of that whole ball of wax, right?
Yeah. So, Ashley, how would, it seems like, so I'm somebody who in my field of marketing, I'm often looking at lots and lots of data myself, and sometimes it becomes overwhelming. So how do you start to work with retailers to say, okay, Steve just mentioned there's lots of different ways for us to slice this thing. How do you work with retailers to make sense of all this data too, so we can turn it into the right information for the business?
No, absolutely. And I think it is a individual conversation with each retailer, because you can start looking at everything from their KPIs that they track to how they operate through their supply chain and into their stores, to better understand, are there priority gaps that you're seeing? How can you solve some of their biggest problems that are causing either lost sales, causing them to have too many markdowns, causing them to sit on too much inventory. And obviously inventory is so important to retailers. It's where their money is tied up, right? That's where their liquidity is. So being able to help them understand how best to manage that inventory, and based on that, what data do they need and what will help them to better operate, as JP was saying about shrink awareness and loss analytics, being able to put together proactive loss prevention strategies based on data, because what left, when it left, and where it left. And even sometimes putting that together with your video, it really changes the perspective. And I know we've worked with a retailer who has said it was completely counterintuitive what we were able to glean from the data. And because of this data, we're now actually on a better path to being able to do more for our loss programs. So definitely working on where are their problems, where are their gaps, and then leveraging the data where it needs to be put into which system and how that works. But it can be hard to rein it in, because there's so many places the data can be used. So also prioritizing that can also be part of the challenge, I'll say.
I think that pun was also intended, so I'm gonna leave that out there for you all to get. But I do want to kind of stay on this topic, because I think it's wonderful for us to kind of hone in on, certainly there are companies on this call or who will listen to it later who are saying, okay, I'm seeing the data out there, the surveys that say, like the recent Accenture survey said 87% of organizations believe that RFID really enabled them to deliver those omni-channel strategies during the pandemic. Obviously, if that's true, the go forward is true. So how do we adopt these technologies, kind of based, Ashley, on your, every company, we need to work with what matters to them, right? We need to start with why. But what are some other, strategic, tips that we can give our audience? And JP, I'm going to turn this over to you to kick this off. But how do we adopt and how do we scale kind of RFID for our retail business if we know this is what's going to carry us into the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always refer to our job on the engineering side and also on the consulting side of those use cases as we're investigators, right? You come to us with a problem. Our job is to not only address that problem, but also to peel off the layers and kind of see where other benefits may be available. I like to sometimes refer to it or look at it as the easily accessible return on investments. With that, I don't just look at the retail side. I've commented on that earlier, where we also have to look at the manufacturing side or the distribution side, right? So because again, it's all a chain reaction, right? So on a manufacturing side, am I making too much? And if I do make too much, how do I store it? And how do I have visibility to, with some instances, ship the older product first, so that it doesn't it doesn't stay on my shelf and now it becomes a loss, right? It's how do I provide my stores visibility to, or excuse me, how do I provide the visibility to my distribution channel to know that it's been manufactured, that it's on the way to the distribution center. And then the next chain reaction is telling my retail store that it's being shipped. And oh, by the way, that we're shipping it properly. We're shipping it to the right store. Because again, what happens, which I'm sure everyone in this audience have experienced on a consumer side, is either being promised a date, like we've talked about earlier, that wasn't fulfilled, or at times receiving the wrong things. And with a lot of these items, sometimes it's not worth it for the manufacturer to even give you a return label to ship it back, right? So our job is to take these problem propositions and to investigate and kind of look at the entire process and apply the necessary technology to it. And I say that because at times it's RFID where we're covering the four walls. Other times it's our job to say, hey, an easy return on investment. You have a manufacturing process that is very clean cut. It follows a certain process every time. So can we put these choke points, these areas where we know the product should go through, and provide a status update back to data, right? Converting that data into information and saying, it's gone through this process. So now we know it's almost ready for shipment. Now that it's ready for shipment, we've seen it there. Did it actually ship? Did it ship at the right dock door? And was that trailer heading to the right retail store? And even taking that further out to provide visibility on the receive side of the retailer to say that we've received it. And again, from there, you can continue to slice that onion to a point where, is it a handheld solution where I'm enabling the retailer to easily detect with an RFID handheld and a Geiger app to know where this specific box of shipment is within the back store, or providing RTLS, real-time locating, to know exactly where it is in the back store. So again, there's so many ways we can do that, but it's our job to accommodate our customers to think this way, to not just narrow vision look at the current problem, but also what other steps, what other parts of that process can be addressed easily. So, yeah.
Yeah, Ashley, I think that you probably have some comments here too to piggyback off of Jean-Pierre.
Definitely. So, I think when we try to make it easy or simple to talk to retailers about what they can do, obviously, we can spend a long time talking about where the data goes, what value they can glean from the data, but then you have to think about it from a more linear perspective, right? And we talked a little bit about adoption for scalability, but really setting the foundation for what your program is going to be and how to enact an adoption with RAIN RFID. And really that starts with a tagging strategy, knowing what to tag, where you're going to tag it. And to be quite honest, for different industries within retail, sometimes it's 100% of your items, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you focus on high turnover or high shrink items. And where you're going to tag it, obviously tagging it at the point of manufacturer, source tagging is very important. One, you can control it better that way and it's more efficient, but also then you have the opportunity to leverage that tagged item throughout the supply chain and into the stores and back. So there's the logical place to start is, what is my tagging strategy? What are the use cases that I want to adopt? And don't think about it as today, think about it as a foundation for the future. So sometimes you say, think about the hardest one and work backwards, and then you'll be able to figure out what is your tagging strategy. One other thing is something that JP and I spoke about a few times before this conversation, which is it's amazing how often retailers are surprised that they have RAIN RFID tagged items already coming into their stores, because so many brands today tag for other retailers that they compliance tag across almost 100% of their items. And so it's interesting to be able to see what retailers kind of already started their program without knowing it, because they already have RAIN RFID tagged items. So that's again, when we start, I like to think about it from a tagging strategy going into use case and data.
That's awesome. They're already doing it. They don't even know.
I don't even know it.
Steve, I'll let you also jump in here and comment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a situation where, you know, a lot of the we call it the OEMs and manufacturers, you know, that actually make a lot of the like Ashley hit the nail on the head. You know, a lot of the garment manufacturers and consumer item manufacturers are already using RAIN RFID for their own purposes. You know, for maybe it's work in progress, or how long has something been in their inventory, and so once it gets to the retail stores, then it's already there, right? So you can already leverage it, not have to worry about that. Another example I can think of is you know, pallet manufacturers, container manufacturers that also, you know, make you know, the containers that said items go into. They often also already have RFID tags, and so it's now the pieces are in place. It's now just leveraging it, right, and then taking that data, like we've talked about, you know, throughout the call, and getting it to the right hands, the right set of eyes, right?
Right. There has been some chatter on the chat. I'm wondering if any of you could volunteer. Maybe I'll start with Ashley. If there's anything that you can share, obviously not anything confidential, but give us some window into some of the financial aspects of this kind of adoption. Are there any generalities that you can share that you've kind of seen in your time so far?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some great case studies out there. There's ROI calculators as well. And a couple of things I'll say is, one, it is rare, if not happening, to see a retailer adopt RAIN RFID and then stop and not continue on with a RAIN RFID deployment or program. So we know once it's working, they see the benefit, and if anything, they're hungry to do more. How do I get more value? How do I add more use cases? Which is really a testament to the fact that RAIN RFID is a proven technology. It's a technology that has been around for long enough that we see the cost curve going down overall. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Another, and we were talking about this as well, is that the studies tell us that the more use cases you adopt, the more ROI you see. So again, what it's telling you is that this isn't a one and done technology or technology program. It is something that will be literally embedded into your enterprise for the many years to come, and will continue to play an important role. And I think the biggest testament to that is if you go to some of the biggest retailers and brands that we know, like a Nike, like an Inditex, you see them talking about it as part of their shareholder reports, right? It's important enough to them that they bring the value of what RAIN RFID does for their entire organization and enterprise all the way out to their shareholders and to the market. So I think that, again, is a big testament to how important this technology is once adopted, and clearly what is the ROI and the benefit.
Yeah, no, it's something that we talk about a lot here. I mean, our company name is Barcoding, which always gives people a giggle when we talk about IoT and RFID. But really at the core, right, we're talking about understanding and you know, a piece of information and having it flow through your organization, whether that's captured through a barcode, a sensor, an RFID tag. You know, these are all similar concepts. But one of the things that always I kind of chuckle at is sometimes I'll hear from people who want to talk about AI, but aren't yet using even barcoding. You know, and so I think, you know, Jean-Pierre, I'd love to talk a little bit as we move into kind of some predictions for the future, is why it's so important to think about this in layers. So why the RAIN RFID is particularly advantageous to have in place before you can start to think about these emerging technologies layering on top. So maybe take us in that direction of those predictions. I know you brought up AI, so I'm passing it off to you first.
Yeah, no, to talk about the future, I want to expand a little bit on something Ashley touched on, and we see this a lot. The topic of IoT, the topic of RFID starts, it gets a lot of traction. A lot of people start talking about it, and we come across potential customers and prospects that they took the initiatives upon themselves to start tagging. And Ashley hit on a point that's very critical for the audience and whoever will watch this in the future for in terms of strategies with RFID is, and the key to that is, what am I going to tag? Ashley said the conversations I've had with Ashley is right on point with that, is what am I going to tag, right? Ashley just mentioned it's to start out, it may not necessarily be 100% of your inventory. But the additional key to that is not all RAIN RFID, passive UHF RFID tags are created equal. And in times, it's not a matter of comparison, it's a matter of a certain tag may be more suitable for a certain type of asset and for the type of use case that you're trying to achieve in terms of dock door visibility versus, I mentioned earlier, a read point at a conveyor, right? So we need to have folks start thinking about the strategy behind that. What am I going to tag? What inlays and RFID labels am I going to choose? Because that ties us also into the future, right? So the future in this case is the technology has over the years improved so much. You talk about new antenna designs. Steve mentioned with Impinj, the new R700, right? So we're seeing the technology improve significantly for the best, and we're seeing these new antenna designs that are resulting in better range. We're seeing better RFID inlays with smarter ICs, which is the integrated circuit, which is that tiny little chip in the center of that RFID inlay. So we're seeing the technology take this path, and we're seeing significant improvements from the previous versions that were already good, right? So to me, RFID will become an integral part of IoT. In our January huddle, we talked about this, because now you start tying in, you made a comment of barcode, right? It's not a competition for me so far of replacing barcodes with RFID. I go into situations where I'm talking to the customer and saying, okay, well, you already have a pretty solid PLC system that's giving us that data, that's giving us visibility to part of your process. My goal is not to necessarily replace that, it's salvage that. Can I use part of that? If there's a barcode system that's being utilized, can we salvage some of that and then enhance it with RFID and IoT as a whole? So to me, RFID will become an integral part of IoT. You're gonna start having, Steve alluded to this as well, RFID, you'll start having RFID enabled products based on advancements in other technologies, right? So being able to do a curtain, right? The whole process of putting that curtain together, or articles of clothing, right? For clothing and retail, now it's a price tag that has the RFID inlay and that price tag. Well, maybe in the future, and not maybe, I know this will happen at some point, it's going to become more affordable and more accessible to have it embedded in the article of clothing. And for some of our audience or some that will see this, it's not a matter of Big Brother watching you or any of that. It's more so for the supply chain visibility. It's more so for making it a better experience for you as the consumer, right? So you have totes, plastic totes that are embedding RFID tags as we speak today, that it's already embedding that in the plastic totes and pallets and so forth. So it will become part of our everyday products. And it's just, again, a matter of retailers to utilize that.
Steve, I'll come to you next, and then I will finish up with Ashley.
So yeah, and again, JP, again, as always, you hit on all good points there. And to go, I guess, to expand on that, absolutely. You know, just going back, 18 years, like all of us have been in the industry for so long. The advancement in the performance of the technology, not only from a cost standpoint, 18 years ago, think of when we can get to a 5-cent tag. Well, okay, we've passed that point, fortunately, right? Or depending upon the tag, right? But the whole idea of a 5-cent tag, right, in the Walmart days.
Even I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like 5 cents. Oh my goodness. But from a technology standpoint, again, this is even before the current iteration of RAIN technology, before Class 1 Gen 2. When you had a passive RFID tag on, one example I can give is a pallet of shampoo, right? It was Pantene shampoo, and each had a tag, and it's like, hey, I can read this pallet by crawling through a portal with 4 antennas and RFID reader. Now it's, hey, look at this, you can do this. Now it's like, yeah, no problem. Tell me more specifically why you want to do this, and what do you want to do with the data. So that's definitely important. And just again, and also on the tags, again, great point, JP. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but the good news in terms of RFID tags, or even readers, but at the same time, there's a lot of good options for different solutions that are available. Whether an item is made out of metal or has metallic content, liquid content, things like that. There are inlays designed, there are RAIN inlays designed for those materials. So that's no longer that big of a worry like it was years ago. And then to that end, too, the final form factor: is it a hang tag, or is it in some cases we're seeing more RFID inlays embedded in the care labels on clothing or in the article itself. So it's here, and you're going to see a lot more of that as we go forward.
Awesome, thank you. And Ashley, from the Impinj point of view, what are some of your predictions? What are you seeing, and what are you guys up to over at Impinj?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything that was just said is so important to point out that, not only is RAIN RFID a proven technology, but it's an industry that is constantly innovating. And I think we see that innovation coming into actual usable technology that gets implemented every day at retailers. So, thank you, Steve and JP, for speaking so highly of Impinj and our products. And you mentioned the R700, one of our latest readers, that's really an edge device, right? Being able to bring to the point of read, being able to bring that data to that point and do more faster, right? Actually having a reader as an edge device. I think you also mentioned our Impinj M700 series of endpoint ICs, which have allowed for many different form factors. And as you spoke of, the size changes, the antenna design changes so that you can tag different items that used to be considered more difficult, as well as bringing embedded and care labels, which, if you think about, also allows for more difficult use cases like a loss prevention or a self-checkout to actually come to fruition. As part of our M700 endpoint IC series as well, we have something called protected mode, which is the ability to basically quiet a tag, right? Put the tag into protected mode, which, if you talked about data privacy, so once that happens at the point of sale at checkout, that tag is no longer read. So as an individual consumer, you no longer have to worry about being tracked or having that tag read. As a retailer, you can now use it for other use cases like loss prevention, or even return frauds and authenticity at the return, as well as we see more retailers adopting it. We don't want a RAIN RFID tag from one retailer interrupting a RAIN RFID tag in another retail store. So again, there are so many innovations coming to light every single day, and Impinj all we do is focus on RAIN RFID. It is absolutely our passion, and is what we bring to the market. And so I see, as we bring new launches, every quarter, every year, basically, that we definitely are seeing the innovation in the industry, and we're seeing the adoptability go up. And so, again, appreciate your partnership at Barcoding, and I think it's a really exciting time as we hopefully head out of what was a really tough 2020 into a much more optimistic 2021 and beyond, especially for retail.
Yes, agreed. And obviously, some of my takeaways here as we've been talking is, well, obviously a very good time, to get involved and to dive into this if you haven't already, and you probably have, because we know that these source tags are happening. But I also couldn't help but think, and this does sound self-serving, I get it, but it's a lot, right? It's a lot to figure out. And I think that's, just to hammer it home, the partners that you select to help you through this and answer the big questions, starting with the why and kind of understanding the tagging strategy, understanding the technology strategy and how that impacts the operational processes and actually the people involved, right? There's a lot to consider. And so I do encourage folks who are watching to reach out, find a quality partner, whether it's Barcoding or someone else, because it is not worth embarking on this alone. And as technology continues to new stuff emerges and things become more complex, or you can do more with these assets that are now kind of IoT enabled, you're going to need that. You're going to need a strong ecosystem of partners. So Barcoding and Impinj are here for you. Obviously, we're not the only ones, but we are here for you. And I encourage you to think about your tech partner ecosystem as being a part of your strategy for adopting RFID, RAIN RFID for your retail business. So that's my little pitch. So we are close to time, and I always like to do a final question to each of the panelists, and this time it's going to be a two-parter. And you guys don't know this because this is I'm coming up with this on the fly. So the first part is, give us your best, kind of Jetson style prediction. Can be the far future, right? What's one little concrete prediction that you have out there, and then what's your key takeaway for the audience? So a Jetson prediction and a key takeaway. So since Steve is our newest Barcoding member, and I'm gonna let him go first.
All right. Wow. Oh, that is a really good one. Jetson's prediction. Okay. I would say, I'd say sticking with the theme and maybe springboarding a little bit on kind of what we talked to before the huddle started on, like you mentioned, the futuristic Taco Bell drive-through that is read about in the news. Yep. I think honestly we're going to see a lot more of that type of point of sale entity, right? Where up to and including perhaps consumer items, right? Right. We're now accustomed to, most of not all of us are accustomed to, having the ability to, with your smartphone or your computer or whatever, ordering whatever you want without having to go into a store, and have to search for stuff. Say, okay, well, I ordered it, I'm going to go pick it up. And now, kind of like a tolling lane, like you have a fast track or an easy pass or something. It's like, well, I already have this, I can go through instead of having to, pay for it on the fourth lane. Like, no, I'd be here at this time and date. Here's your order. Great. Put it in, throw it in your window, and you're off on your way. So I think honestly, we're going to see a lot more of that. And we're already seeing that today. So that's kind of my Jetson's prediction there. And then takeaway, I think if anything, it's just the only direction is up. I mean, again, just, having been in the, the early days of the technology, like all of us here, and seeing where it's led us today and where it's leading in the future, it's the only direction is up. And I think as more and more people come on board and say, hey, this RAIN technology, I can use this, or how can I use this? Mm-hmm. Give us a call and we're happy to help.
Awesome. All right, Jean-Pierre, you're up next.
Jetson prediction. I guess two parts. One, I think, will be a fun one. Now that 3D printing is becoming more available, I think it's going to be even easier to embed RFID technology within virtually anything, even stuff that you make at home for the sake of identifying it as your own, right? So I think you'll be able to do that. And another one that I commented on earlier is, I think virtually everything will start having, think of it this way. You buy a TV now, if you call for technical support, provided that the TV's online, somebody on the other line gets an ID and they start troubleshooting your TV, right?
Right.
So TVs, everything else, they'll start having RFID embedded, so that a technician that comes to your house to service your furnace or your air conditioning can just scan it and they get all the information that they need to have on that product. So instead of having to look for a little tag that you can't read, right?
Right.
Key takeaway is, again, touched on it. Ashley mentioned it and I expanded on it, is tagging strategy, right? Start, if you want to implement RFID, start thinking about your tagging strategy. Ashley said it best. It may not necessarily be 100% of your inventory. So start thinking about that.
Awesome. And Ashley, we're going to give you the final word as our top partner here on the huddle, Impinj. So what is your Jetson prediction and your key takeaway?
Yeah, so near term Jetson prediction is we will see a lot more RAIN RFID checkout and self-checkout. I think longer term, I think we'll see RAIN RFID readers embedded into our smartphones. So as your TVs come with RAIN RFID chips in them, we as consumers will start being able to leverage the technology ourselves. And a key takeaway, I think that digital transformation is here and it requires investment by retailers now.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I truly appreciate the time with you all today. My Jetson prediction is I'm still waiting for my flying car. I continue to wait for my flying car. So I'm going to hang on to that, and hopefully RFID will make that possible somehow. But no, in all seriousness, I truly learned a lot today. I really appreciate everyone's time. So Ashley and Team Impinj, thank you so much for bringing this conversation to light. Jean-Pierre, Steve, for joining us from Barcoding. Truly appreciate your perspectives. As you know, this video is being recorded, so we will have this available for you to watch later. If you have additional questions, please reach out. You can find us at barcoding.com, or you can check out our YouTube channel, the rest of our social media channels. We are happy to help you kind of put together an Impinj-based solution for your retail operations. So thank you again, everyone, and we will talk to you next time. Hi, did you enjoy the huddle? I sure hope so. We were really excited to have you as part of our conversation and would love to continue it. If you have a question or a challenge that you're facing and Barcoding can help you out, please reach out. You can contact us on barcoding.com anytime, or any of our social media channels. Again, we are here to help and would love to chat with you. Final ideas. Did you like the huddle so much you wanted to join? Do you want to come on air with me? Do you know someone who would be a great fit, or a topic that you'd like to see covered? If so, reach out to me via email or LinkedIn, and I am happy to check in with you and talk through what we might be able to accomplish together. I would love to hear your ideas. We're always looking for new topics. So if you have an idea for Huddle, or you'd like to be on a Huddle, contact me and we will make it happen. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.